What is up, Jam? And sideways, all you beautiful individuals. We have returned for another Epi League on August. Solo on today's episode for your first proper weekend recap highlights with all the major regions on the Rift. It was an absolute flurry, bonanza, and it's been a bit bizarre with, call them upsets if you want, or first stand hangovers aplenty across many major regions. We now know that KT Rolster is far and away the best team, not just in the LCK, but on the entire planet, and probably will be for all of 2026. And we were fully steamrolling ahead to disaster, overreaction, blow it all up, talking about a 0-2 start for T1. But they once again proved that they are the fathers of their friends, their former teammates in Zeus and Gumiyoshi, as T1 hand HLE a tough loss. It went the distance. You know, we had some competitive action. Kanavi had himself a nice Baron steal, but aside from that, it was a forgettable experience throughout this set, especially in some of the first games, as we saw that Zeus, despite having some nice little pocket picks, having some fun. We had the Anivia, which, by the way, can be shockingly now is the triple flex pick that we have, both support, mid, and top, but never really, despite having some nice outplays, able to take over the game or have proper real impact. And same can be said for the Vayne game. It was very much a let's give Zeus the opportunity to show up against his former squad, and again, there were moments, but the rest of the team, I mean, Owner had himself a fantastic set, and really, this was a case of Hanwha had a solid, especially early game in the second game, where they get a couple of kills in the bot lane. We're about to see this Yunara pop off on Gumayushi. He gets so fed, but he's just never able to actually get into any of these team fights, able to do anything, and Owner just collectively goes from lane to lane to lane. All three lanes, he provided with a relief gank to get them back into the game. So absolute MVP level performance out of Owner, and perhaps the overreaction of T1 being dead in the water by losing to KT was a little bit over-exaggerated to the shock of absolutely nobody. And same can be said for Hanwha. You know, they beat the Bros in convincing fashion to get their first win of spring. Great. Would have been disaster if you lost that, but doesn't bode well for a game or a series getting 2-0'd by T1. I mean, they weren't destroyed. Again, talked about the positives that were there, and there's really no reason to overreact for HLE other than Zeus continuing to be the son, maybe even grandson now of Doran at this point. But this wasn't really about Doran gapping Zeus with some of those, with the Anivia and the Vayne pick. It was more about Owner leveling up and Kyria having himself a pretty fantastic set, which, listen, that's the recipe for T1, is those two guys being the highlight. But the mystery starts weren't just there. We know KT already took down GenG in absolute shocking fashion, so somehow we had this GenG BFX matchup with a couple of 0 and 1 squads, because somehow, again, BFX lost to the Bros, who, yes, on the life just completely dismantled, and really the ultimate first stand hangover battle was between these two squads, and it was not GenG. They got to bounce back, but BNK Furex look like they are a few thousand kilometers or miles, depending on where you're from, away from what they were in the winter split, what they were at first stand. It might be safe to say G2 broke the Foxes, because there was not much working well for them against GenG here. Diablo on, first off, having that Senna game. Nobody wants to see Diablo on Senna. I don't know what the situation is there, why we're even seeing that, but wasn't good across the board from BFX. Even though with these 0-1 starts for T1 and Hanwha, the most egregious and yucky surprising start has actually been BFX, because they have been a cut below whatever this competition is, as GenG, solid bounce back for them. It's, again, I've talked about teams feel like, or it feels like people are rooting for GenG to lose more than other squads. So seeing them, you know, get dismantled by G2 in first stand. Then they come right back onto the Rift and proceed to lose 2 series in a row. I don't know if GenG has lost 2 series in a row in like 3 years. But when they lose to KT to kick things off, I feel like people were frothing at the mouth, excited to see the downfall or the change of this near basically dynasty that GenG has put forth, but wasn't actually going to be the case as they come through against BFX and avoid all that overreaction. But now again, this middle of the pack of the LCK is going to be oh so spicy, with KT leveling up to the level that they have and BFX having a slow start. D Plus is going to have to earn their way. I can't wait to see how this is going to shake up the rest of that action over in the LCK. Had some marquee matchups and almost ready to call a season over for squads. When you have the iconic Fnatic G2 rivalry, it has not hit as hard as it used to in about, I don't know, 6 years? At least 5 years probably, with the Fnatic 0-2 start. G2 did get their first win of the split by taking down Heretics already, and I mean, this looked like not actually overreacting. After the first game where G2 has a dominant win, and you're thinking, okay, if Fnatic gets 0-2'd here and they fall to 0-3 on the split, I'm ready to call it. Playoffs cooked. They're done. But the black and gold said they're not quite dead yet. Bouncing back, not just to beat G2 in reverse sweep fashion and dominant reverse sweep fashion. All of a sudden, Vladdy and Ampiros came alive, played like they haven't played the entire split. Razork, we know this guy ebbs and flows. He has some inting moments, and then he has a game where, I mean, like the third game against G2, he kind of just runs the Rift on a comfort pocket, not pocket pick, on a comfort pick, like the Vi, to take things over and just let Upset cook. Let him get fed, let him get a few items and take over games. Like 20 kills almost to 4, a 10k plus gold lead for Fnatic. They destroy G2 to not only just get a series win against, I'm not going to call them a rival anymore because this hasn't been a rivalry, but against the top team in Europe to kind of stop the bleeding for this abysmal start that they had. Because you remember, especially the Koi series, Fnatic, they weren't even close. They were getting absolutely destroyed. Looked like an ERL team in that matchup. So them bouncing back to get this big win, obviously it means a lot more for them than G2, who have the typical international hangover. How do you go from playing BLG in the finals, upsetting GenG, to having to get motivated and fired up to play Heretics Fnatic in week 1, week 2 of the regular season? It's such a long journey. You're not going to have the same level of motivation. Whereas Fnatic, it was already feeling like do or die to go 0-3, and the confidence that they will get from taking down the best squad in the region. Happy for Fnatic to actually have some positive things for the fans to take going forward for them. So we'll see if they can still be a playoff team. It's a long road to go because there's a lot of teams still in that mid-pack to worry about. I mean, Giant X just went 3-0 to start. That's still, they're the most fraudulent good team that we've had over the last couple of years in the LEC. But earlier in the weekend, we had a tasty matchup between Vitality and the 2-0 Na'Vi squad, and this was maybe the banger of the weekend, especially this game 2 where we get the Aurelian soul sighting out of Humanoid, and we get a turn back the clock continuation for him and Carzzy, and Vitality has quickly become the most entertaining team to watch in Europe. And it's not just because Knock-Knocko is honestly separating the distance between him and every other top laner in the LEC. This was a highlight reel performance out of him over the weekend, and really the first 3 series of Vitality's season have been. The amount of pressure this guy draws both in ganks and in team fights, just absolutely running it to the opposition backline, or, you know, zoning 3 people away, whatever it is that he does it well. He does it the best in the league, as it was a near 50-minute that it ended up being for them to take away that one, game 2. And game 1 was a little bit more dominant for Vitality. And remember, this is a squad that one miscommunication or lack of deciding to end the game almost 2-0 KC. And if that has been the case, well, then you're talking about a 3-0 Carmine, or 3-0 Vitality, excuse me, that's taken down KC and now taken down a 2-0 Na'Vi, who are looking very good in their first couple of series. So, and should be feeling quite good about this VIT squad being, again, most exciting. Lincecum has some of the cleanest smites in the league for being such a young player. I know Jungle is kind of a stacked role in the LEC right now, but Lincecum is showing that he can go toe-to-toe with the best of the best. The Carzzy and Fleshy synergy continues to grow. Humanoid, he still died a few times for no reason, over pushing a lane or just trying to get CS, but that I don't think will ever get shored up. All we can do is minimize it and maximize when you do have these Aurelion Sol level performances that we got out of him. But that middle pack of the LEC is completely wide open, and even G2, I mean, apparently not unbeatable, but if anything we learned from the last split of the LEC, it's not to care about G2's ranking when they head into playoffs. So everyone just keep that in mind. They were 7th and beat GenG at an international event. So don't really even talk about G2 until playoffs roll around. Only talk about the teams that are able to take advantage and beat them. We had a finals rematch over in the LCS, Cloud9 versus Lion Gaming, and God bless them, the opener of the LCS did deliver by getting us to the bronze scrapes. Obviously not best of 5, but we made it to game 3. APA got his win on the Ziggs. He was playing the Anivia beforehand, Orianna in game 3, and truthfully, this series was really a tale of two different dominant lanes. Berserker and Isles were dominating the laning phase throughout the majority of this set, but Thanatos was absolutely gapping the top lane, and Cloud9 were honestly playing the team fights better. They had the better synergy, as you know, the Baron eventually goes over to them, and they didn't really look back from there in that third game. Vulcan had a peak Bard performance, and Thanatos, even though he's like 1-3 at one point, still had a massive gold lead. Dokla had a kind of forgettable set. I know he was tank duty most of this game, or most of the series. He had a Scion and an Ornn game, but Thanatos was the guy for Blabber and the boys on Cloud9, and that is probably their best win con, their best play style is when they can play completely around Thanatos in that top lane. Satan had some nice moments on the Akali, but it didn't really matter. This series closed out in probably more dramatic fashion than it needed to be, but it was poetically fitting to have Thanatos alone in the base in a 1v3 to close out the game. Yes, Vulcan gets exploded at the end, but a little bit more dramatic than necessary. Cloud9 was going to win that game, probably, whether or not there's this crazy little base race at the end. But shout out, it's a big win for the region as a whole to have Cloud9 get the better of Lion Gaming. We don't want to get a one-team runaway type of situation that we've seen in the past where they're not tested, they're not pushed, and they crumble on the international stage. Lion leveled up in playoffs to qualify for first stand. You can argue whether or not they disappointed in their results, but we need to be pushing each other as a region. So positive signs to see Cloud9 take a set out of Inspired and the boys, and positive signs also to see FlyQuest and Team Liquid going the distance. And again, if you're thinking strength and competitive integrity of the region, it's probably good for Team Liquid to win this, for FlyQuest to continue to grow. And there was a bit of a jungle mismatch in, I mean, the whole series, but really game 3. And you see Jose Dioto loves the Lee Sin. He had a fantastic Lee Sin game and a fantastic series really from start to finish. You see the signs of Griffin, the plays he's going for, he's hyper aggressive. But game 3, you see the other side of that coin, or double-edged sword, and it was very sharp. Him, the Ambessa game got caught out a few times. Trundle also got caught out, and when I say caught out, it's either, I mean, it's a combination of things, either standing, warding somewhere he has no business going, a la the support route, or just stepping too far forward, maybe thinking he's tankier than he is when he can press that Trundle ulti and completely getting blown up. But just misjudging how far forward he can be, what his capabilities are on whatever champion he is. There's still absolutely room for growth for him. So we're excited still at the potential of FlyQuest, even though they lose this series, but we did have a much better individual performance pretty much across the board in this series. Morgan was maybe a little bit of a passenger princess in this one, but Jan and Quid especially, which I think were the two guys that after last split we were saying, you need a lot more out of these two who were supposed to be best in their role in the region, or in the very least in that contention conversation for it. Didn't have many angles where you could be talking about that last split, and definitely more of a level up out of them. So excited for the LCS to number one, see Lion get tested, lose a game, Team Liquid to be leveling up, Shopify Rebellion picking up a win this early. They couldn't do it in 3 best ofs last split, so somebody in the offseason probably smacked them in the back of the head. They might have smacked themselves in the back of the head to say, we are much better than this, and they proved it by picking up a win. So here we are. Some positive signs very, very, very early on in the LCS in terms of growth, development. Over to the LPL, where, again, debut. It's the first week of spring, and shocking that the LPL was actually one of the last regions to kick off. Usually I feel like they're a week ahead of everybody else because they are jam-packing their schedule. Maybe wanted to give BLG and JDG a teensy little bit of extra time off as they both made their debuts against each other to make it feel like you were just still hanging out at the first stand event. And unfortunately, history continues to repeat itself, even though this was a much more close and competitive series than the 3-0 drubbing that BLG gave the JDG boys at first stand. It was a little bit more, cooking in the bot lane for On. Shen is hardly cooking. That's a fun pocket pick now. But we got to a competitive game 3 as JDG were managed to take a game off with some nice play out of Hongq, Junjia, and Gala in the bot lane. And even in this third game, Junjia individually had a pretty massive lead over Jun, and there was a nice Baron take out of JDG when they were down in gold that you maybe thought, okay, they snuck this. Maybe they can start to clamp down on this gold lead, get back into the game, and Bin's going too deep on the Renekton. Maybe this is our angle, but this Baron buff ended up being a negative power play for them. I think they lost like 1,000 gold, and then there ends up being a soul going over to BLG as they continue to just be the better team fighters. It was absolutely a Gigabin showing, and I think we got to start putting his Renekton in the same breath as his Jax, because it was an absolute menace on the Rift. Gala had absolutely no way to play the game with the Croc constantly flashing on his face in the back line, and I just talked about a one-team region for the LCS. Well, the LPL is much more close to that side of things than Lion Gaming was, who again struggled for the majority of the split before turning it on in playoffs last year. BLG, they've dropped some series, sure, but when it turns to best of fives and the stakes are the highest, they have not been tested within the LPL, and they were not fully tested. You were pretty confident BLG was winning that game 3 against JDG, but really we're kind of grading how does JDG look against the rest of the teams in the LPL right now, because until they beat BLG in playoffs, well, that's going to be a monkey on their back, the hurdle that they need to get over. So we look at, okay, what are the other challengers? What are the other rivals to look about in the LPL? And it feels like it's been so long since we've seen anyone's legend on the Rift, probably because it has. And how about the new look top esports, Juan in the top lane, because 369 is stepping away. But the real story of returns were Tien and Jackie Love coming back, and anyone's legend having what seemed to be control of this head-to-head series with a near 5k gold lead before one single team fight. The synergy's still there for Jackie Love and Tien, no question, and Feng Yue finds a fantastic Seraphine ult to, erase a near 5k deficit immediately to steal game 1, and that momentum fully carried into game 2 for TES as Tien gets an absolute disgusting flash predict on the vibe pick out of him, and it was Top Esports in control from start to finish, as Cream has got to be counting his blessings coming into this split, having a jungler that's not actively win trading to lose him a game, having someone he already has synergy in Cream, and having another dual carry threat in Jackie Love, even as he will probably take a few weeks to warm up to get back to that near MVP level AD carry form. But here's your next man up for JDG to test themselves against is both Top Esports and AL, and TES had a kind of rough debut against Invictus Gaming that they lost, and this was like an IG with a lot of new look guys, or not rookie in the lineup. It was Reynard, who actually won the Demacia Cup with IG, but this is your next tier up, and this is more of the conversation that I think JDG is going to have to prove themselves against, because BLG very much in that G2 category where whatever happens in the regular season doesn't really matter. Somebody needs to beat them or test them in playoffs, which again has not happened in 2026. And unlike G2, BLG doesn't really flounder much in the regular season. They will probably sit atop the standings for the majority, if not all, of the spring split, be that first seed and final boss, and will be for the whole year. So who's stepping up? Is this Top Esports going to be better? Is AL, was 2025 really just a distant pipe dream, because we have not seen them reach close to that level in 2026? I know still only 2 series in the spring split, but even in winter, never really saw it. So Weibo, can you show up? JDG, prove yourself against the rest of these squads. We need somebody to push BLG to the brink if the LPL, I would say if they want to compete internationally, but they just won the first international split of the year, but they didn't have to beat GenG. They didn't have to beat that top tier LCK team. They did beat BNK, so maybe we don't need to worry at all. Maybe a one-team region is the way to do it, and BLG can just speed run through an international event to get a first World's Championship Fortnite for the rest of the guys. Who knows? But either way, I think if you're a fan of the LPL, you want to see some pushback, and can't wait for the overreactions to get even better as this spring split carries on. But this is very, very, very early days to be having any sweeping hot takes. That won't stop us from doing it as the week goes on. But that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you stunners for hanging out as always.